You're joining other alumni here. Welcome to the second 3-week session of our Critical Conversation series. My name's TJ Mannix. I traveled in Cast B 1991, and I am in New York City right now. Welcome. If those of you had the opportunity to be here for the first session, we had 3 different weeks where we brought in alumni talking about education and how we're handling it during 2020 and during COVID. And we had 1 week of alumni that were talking about working as teachers, educators. We had 1 week where we talked to the parents about what it's been like. And then those of you that were here during week 3 know that the kids took over and may have even infiltrated the program and started drawing on our slides because they're all brilliant kids. This program was started by a group of alumni. We're all volunteers. Donalda McCarthy from B91 saw the need for this. We realized that alumni had forgotten how to talk to each other and also had forgotten how to listen to each other in particular. I know 2020 has been a challenging year for everyone all over the world. We wanted to bring this together and have an opportunity to speak to alumni and let them take up space and speak uninterrupted and share their stories. And we're very excited. This week, we are talking about BIPOC, or Black, Indigenous, and Men of Color on the Road. It's the same tour with a different experience. I am here to listen, and I hope that everyone out there is here to listen too. If you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a Q&A button. At any point, if you'd like to ask a question of anyone on the panel, you can do that. Just please write down your name, where are you from, and what year did you travel, so we can take it back to the way it was when you were on the road. And we can actually mention who you are and where you're from and what year you traveled when we answer your question. I'm excited to introduce this panel to you. We have representatives from 5 decades of Up With People. And I'd like to begin with, of course, the only place that I could start. Let me ask Gilbert Sanchez, who is from 1965 from the original cast. And Gilbert, I know that I'm going to turn it over to you for your own introduction. So go ahead and turn off, unmute. There you go.
Okay, well, thank you. My name is J. Gilbert Sanchez. I was part of the original Up With People MRA group that started it and whatnot. We traveled the East Coast, and then I ended up traveling into Japan and retired from that Up With People programs in 1966 to serve the country. Since we as young Native Americans from New Mexico, and I'll speak only about New Mexico natives, is that we were so naive that when we went up to MRA and when we were on tour, we really weren't looking at the things that we're talking about today. But I've come a long ways. I've learned a lot. During the tour, the original tour, most of us Native Americans and other ethnicities and other races, we were congregating amongst ourselves most of the time. We were not so much crossing the imaginary boundaries until Willie Story started coming into my life. And most of you know Willie Story. He and I just became so close, and we were almost inseparable with John Ruffin and John Parker and that group of young men that was there. Now that we're seniors, we still continue to talk to each other, pass things on about what's going on in our lives or what's happening in the world. And it's been a pleasure to have that kind of camaraderie develop from where we're at. Just a note, all the young men that came to Mackinac Island and were the original cast of Up With People, even those guys from Arizona, we all became tribal leaders at one point in time in our lives. Needless to say, 90% of those individuals have now passed on to the spirit world, as we call it. But you know, the experience I had personally was that it was one of my greatest times in my life as a young person growing up and being building the foundation for my future. Was that, you know, didn't get a chance to really interact or be placed with people or families that were not the lower echelon of families in the communities that we went to. I was always placed in homes that were above the standard of poverty. So I really didn't experience that much, but the folks that I stayed with were very open to and discussion of our native ways and our relationship with the dominant society, and et cetera, et cetera. But needless to say, you could feel that there was some things going on within Up With people, because even after shows or during shows, we were always, how would I say, I hate using the word segregated, but we were always apart from each other's. We hardly ever got to know the folks. The only African Americans I really got to know was Willie Story and the Lowe brothers, because we all played basketball, and gave us a commonality in where we were at. Other than that, you know, the other folks, the other nations, other nationalities, ethnicities, I hardly had the opportunity to really intermix with them. But I'll say this out to the Europeans that came to Mackinac Island. They were the only ones that really were interested in the Native American culture and the history of the Native Americans. Most Euro-Americans do not understand the Native American in this country, the country which they have developed, the United States of America. They have put us to the side and have tried to deny the fact that we were here before anybody else. So, you know, it's as I grew up and I've gone to where I'm at today at this age and time, and having walked the life of my life through all these things, of all the things that I have seen, I thank the MRA Up With people giving me a foundation and giving me that opportunity to become vocal in defending not only my culture, my people, but other peoples, other ethnicities, and those things that are dear to us in our world. The stone, the tree, the river, the fish, the deer, the elk, animals that are there. After being involved with Up With people, I became a activist on anti-nuclear issues throughout this country, throughout the world. I have dear friends throughout the country, throughout this world that we have collaborated with, and especially within the Deep South, how the injustice has been going on, the racism that has been going on, trying to address those issues while we were active as members of different organizations to address the issues that were there. So basically, my experience with Up With people was a more or less positive, but yet from a distant, being away from all the other ethnicities and all the other races, all the other kids that were there from different parts of the world. And I appreciate the time you've given me. I hope I have not offended anybody in my words, but this is coming from my heart and my soul. So
Gilbert, thank you so much. And we're honored to have you here as one of the trailblazers, as one of the original cast members. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to speak without being interrupted. What Gilbert did not tell you is that he also was a former governor of the Pueblo de San Ildefonso. He was founder of their environmental protection department. He was executive director of the Los Alamos Four Pueblos project, addressing the environment and social justice and health impacts from the Los Alamos National Laboratory. And he also was a special envoy under President Clinton to the Native American nations. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Michael Scott traveled in Cast B 1972. He's joining us from Omaha, Nebraska. As you can tell by looking at him, he is an award-winning broadcaster, who knows what color looks best on him on television. He's a community leader, was a congressional candidate, a university educator, and I need to ask about, he has YouTube's most popular video. What is that about, Michael?
You've seen the video, you probably just don't know it's me. If you Google lizard attacks anchor,
yes,
that's me.
Oh,
And TJ, I knew as a media guy that you would know what I'm talking about, okay? Yeah, that happened before there was YouTube, before there was Google, and 2 years after it happened, ABC News called me the first viral star.
wow.
Yeah.
I remember exactly what that is. Now, did you manage to get some coffee this morning?
I'm actually doing ice water.
Okay, all right, whatever works for you. Fantastic. So Michael's here representing the 70s. We're going to jump ahead into the 80s now, and I'm going to have Eric Strickland join us. Eric is a professional musician. He has performed all over the world. He performed on Soul Train, which blows my mind.
What?
And a host of other dance programs in the 1990s. I'm going to ask about your group. He played concerts with some of the top entertainers in the business, and he started as a bass player for Cast C and Up With People in 1981-82. So coming in from Los Angeles, the earliest among us, Eric, good, very early morning.
Good morning. I'm happy and honored to be here.
You have to tell us about who did you perform with on Soul Train? What was the name of your group?
The name of my group was Z Look. We weren't very famous, but we were on the show with Milli Vanilli.
Oh,
And yeah, we were on that.
So were you faking it too?
Well, on Soul Train, everybody fakes it. We did a lot of faking too, you know, because it's it is what it is. We probably faked more than we actually played for real.
See, that's from your Up With People stadium training.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to bounce back to New York City and bring in someone from the 90s, Tony Everett. Tony is a native Floridian. He now lives in Brooklyn, and he works as a marketing consultant in the fashion industry, in case you can't tell by how stylish his glasses are. Serafina, his daughter, is a sophomore in college. She is 19. And Tony, good morning.
Morning.
I'm glad that you're no longer living in the haunted private school that you lived in when you first moved to New York City.
Yeah, that was a very interesting building. First of all, I want to thank you guys for actually doing this, and I'm really happy and excited to be on this panel. Yeah, so I traveled back in 91B with TJ and Donalda. And as you said, I'm originally from Florida. Grew up on a farm, 75 acres, pigs, chickens, and, you know, all the vegetables that I could probably have, and walked into the fashion world. I still don't know how I got there, but yeah, so I worked for H&M for about almost 21 years. And then, you know, COVID hit, some changes happened, which was great for me because I wanted to break off to do my own marketing consulting. So it was a gentle and much needed push. But yeah, I'm great. New York, surviving here.
Okay, thanks, Tony. And we're excited for the first time. We have a panelist who traveled recently. So Jeffrey Foreman is also coming in from California, from Eureka. He traveled in Cast A 2009. He's a California native with deep Southern roots. He was a big community service enthusiast on the road while he was also singing and dancing. Since traveling, he works in the banking industry. And when he's not working, he volunteers his time with different youth programs around Eureka, California. Jeffrey, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Great. It's good to see you. Yes. Yes.
Hello. Well, thank you guys so much, first of all, for even inviting me onto this panel. I think it's really awesome. It's a conversation that's needed. And I'm really excited to be here. I feel honored to have been, asked to do this. And it's really cool already. Just, I've only been off the road for what, 10, 11 years now. And it's just really cool to hear everyone's stories, because there's so many things that are like similar in my head. I'm like, oh, I had a situation like that. And then there's like things that are so different. So it's really cool. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you guys all.
It's a conversation that hasn't necessarily happened in front of an audience of Up With People alumni before. And it's long overdue. And we're actually bringing in someone who is not an alum, who's going to be our moderator, who's going to be joining us. And Will Jones is actually going to be working with us for the next 3 weeks over our entire 3-week series dealing with race on the road. Will is an award-winning public relations and broadcast professional. I'm not going to point it out, but that might be an Emmy over his left shoulder. Just saying. He currently serves as the Director of External Communications for Denver Public Schools. So he is coming to us from Denver, Colorado. And he manages all facets of external communication for the fastest growing urban school district in the United States in terms of enrollment. There's more than 92,000 students. So while serving as the primary spokesperson for the school district, he handles broadcast, print, and online media. So everything. He simultaneously is handling crisis communications during emergencies. And he works closely with others in the districts in the command structure to make sure that accurate information gets out to the public, including the parents and the media sources. He's also served as an external communications manager for the University of Denver and as a news anchor for WCNC. So we're very lucky to have some incredible journalists with us as well. Will, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, TJ. Again, I'm honored to be able to come inside, take a look inside the inner sanctum of Up With People. I've been a fan since high school. In Asheville, North Carolina was the first time I saw a production of Up With People. I've also seen productions on the Super Bowl and, watching The Simpsons when I saw the hooray for everything. I was like, that's Up With People. So it's an honor to be a part of this group. I'm really excited about getting into some what I call real talk today. We're going to have this cross-generational discussion, and some of the topics aren't going to be what an outsider like me would consider Up With People-ish. But I know instead of 11 months together, we've only got a couple of hours. So I'm asking that we make the best of this time. And I'm asking that we all assume positive intent with what's said. And as TJ said earlier, I'm asking that you please speak your truth. And I want you, men of color, to understand that I get it. As a Black man working in television news, I was typically the only Black person on staff. Many times I was the only Black person in the newsroom. So I had to wear a mask. And I'm thinking that many of you can understand that. And I wanted to start by reading a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar. He wrote this back in 1895, but I think it applies to all of the panelists today. We wear the mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks. It shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. And so today, gentlemen, I'm asking you to remove your masks and let's have some real discussions. And I'd like to start with Mr. Sanchez. First off, Mr. Sanchez, thank you for your service. One of the things you said early on that really intrigued me was when you talked about the self-segregation. Can you talk to us a little bit more about why that happened? Was it something the Native Americans and other people of color came to an agreement with, or did it just happen?
I think it was an ongoing issue all my life and whatnot, and, especially in high school and in college. I saw that we would self-segregate when we went to dances or functions that were going on, and it just continued with what I saw and remember back now, thinking about how things were going with people on the original cast. Like I said, I never had a real interaction with African American females, Hispanic females, or European females throughout that time that I spent with people. It was always with just my male counterparts, and mostly of European American descent. It was hard, like I said previously. There's 3 individuals who were African American who we became close with because we had a common level of interest, that was basketball, and we went on continually with that. But that's how it is. But I noticed after many years being apart from Up With People, I started noticing that, hey, we were talking about all the unity in the world and all the things that were good to come out of this thing, yet we were compartmentalized, and that was not how I wanted things to be. I wanted things to go on. As we go on, I can say that the European contingent of that time, the young men and women who came to Mackinac Island, who were in Up With People, have maintained to this day connections with my older brother who was in Up With People with me, that we have continued to have relationships with them, and they have been very positive. And I have hardly ever throughout my travels in this country run across any of my Euro-American counterparts coming up to me and saying, I was with you and Up With People. That has not been there. So, we look at these things, we see what the natural order might be or shouldn't be, but it is there. And it is disheartening to see all these things that have happened.
Well, Mr. Sanchez, I know it's not a fair question because you've had a couple days on this earth, walking this earth since then. If you knew back then what you know now, what you know right now, are there any conversations you would have had with those other castmates to have maybe bridged the gap, or have you had any chance to think about that?
Well, I guess first of all, I look at the panel. I don't see any Hispanics or Asians on there, and other ethnicities from the Western Hemisphere. And where are we at in doing the things we're talking about and what's going on? If I had the opportunity and I had the knowledge that I have today, from the very first time I got onto Mackinac Island, I would have started challenging the leadership and the directorship of MRA to be more inclusive and be more inclusive in the interactions of all the young people that were there. Those are the things that I look upon now. I have learned a lot. I have learned that, hey, sometimes people put you in your place. Why? Because they don't want you speaking your mind, your heart, and because you're a person of color. And that is evident in what I have seen and the questions that have come across. This is a free-flowing conversation that we should be having about racism, and all these things that impact us from the very first time to the onset to this point in time in our lives. And there should be one saying, this is a conversation we should not be going off the tangent on. But because we should be going off the tangent on, that will be more inclusive of all the peoples that were in Up With People and that are still in Up With People to get to that point where we want to get to in 2035 or 2050. That equality, justice is all about us, the people, humanity, not about color, not about race, not about stature of your financial influence. It should be one man, one woman, one woman. And that's where we should be at. That's where we should be trying to attain that equality.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Yeah, those very deep, very profound, very true. I'd like to turn to Mr. Scott. Michael Scott, can you talk to me about what your experiences were like in the early 70s? Can you relate to any of the things that Mr. Sanchez brought up as far as how the castmates either interacted or didn't interact? You're muted. Your mic. Come on, television man.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have an attack trained Shih Tzu over here.
No lizard though.
No lizard though. Yeah, you know, I guess I neglected to give a little bit more background of myself. I'm pretty much the Kamala Harris story. My mom and dad were born in Kingston, Jamaica, and my father is of East Indian heritage, but I was born in New York City and raised in New York City. When Upward People came to see us in 1972, I was in my last year of high school, and they came with their small little strike group to do a show for us because they were getting ready for their big to-do at Carnegie Hall. And because I was involved in student government and also involved in the theater department, I was asked to take them around to classrooms so they could meet the kids. I never got to see the show. I never saw an Upward People show for my first few months. In fact, it was funny because I told my folks that I had gotten invited to go down that weekend to Manhattan to do an interview for being in the cast. And, you know, my father, who was an educator, he was like, well, I don't know about this, you know. And I said, well, you can get your first year of college and you can travel. And in the back of my head, I'm going, and they got a lot of good looking women. And I went down and got the interview, and John Parker gave me my final interview. They gave me some tickets for my parents to go see the show. And my parents came back from the show, and my mom's a bit of a joker. And she goes, oh, bad news, honey, you didn't get in. And I went, oh, that's okay. And they went, no, you did get in. But by that time, it'd been like 3 weeks, and I had kind of been, you know, I had a teacher who was telling me, well, the guys and girls don't hang out together, and all you do is sit around and play guitars all the time. So I was going, I don't know if that's me. Keeping in mind at that time, I had an afro out to my shoulder blades, and I was 145 pounds. I looked like a giant microphone with a windsock on top. And I had kids tell me when I joined up with the cast in Burlington, Vermont, at that suburb, and it was hot. I get off the plane with the afro and a Black Panther leather jacket, and I'm scowling because I had been up the night before with my buddies hanging out on a rooftop. And I had cast members come up to me and say, I was frightened of you when I first met you.
Michael,
And
how many other people of color were part of your touring group?
I think we probably had, well, this was all three casts together for that summer. So we probably had out of 250 students, maybe 17 Black kids. A lot of Native Americans were with us. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. In '73, they had the CBS special, and they took some lead dancers and myself from my cast and flew us down to New Mexico to tape this special. And the family that picked us up, your upper middle class family, white, father, mother, teenage daughter, and a young son. And this guy picks me up and a Native American guy who I did not know because he was with one of the other casts. And this guy says to us as we're driving to his house, he goes, you know, I just want you two to know, I told my wife, I didn't want any niggers, Indians, or spics in my house, and I got you two.
He said that out loud.
He said it to us. And this wasn't just a one-night affair. We were there for the taping of the whole special. So we were there almost a week. And I would come home from like 12-hour, 14-hour rehearsals and sit up with this man at night and talk about him or talk to him, because I gathered that this man had his own preconceived ideas. He goes, oh, this is a teenage kid from New York with an afro. His mother's probably a junkie. His father's probably not in the picture. And I let him know what we were all about. Hey, my father is an educator. My mom at the time worked for IBM. You know, my sister is on track to go to Howard University. No, we're doing quite well. And what was so funny about that whole experience is that I did not realize that New Mexico got so damn cold. And I was not dressed properly. And on my last day there, they took us to our drop-off point, and the wife and the daughter all had kisses and stuff for me. And the guy walks over and he hands me a gift wrap box. And he said, it's not usual to see the likes of me give the likes of you anything. But if you're ever in town again, you got a place to stay. And he gave me a pair of gloves. And to me, at that time, it was like, one at a time. You got to win them over one at a time. You've got to educate. You got to communicate. And that was just, you know, that's something I took with me as a journalist. You know, I've been a reporter since 1977. Yes, I'm old. Since 1977. And I've also been an educator on the university level. And these are skills that, you know, I thought made me good at the jobs I did because of getting somebody to talk and share their experiences with you. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, what the Native American gentleman, I can't remember his name, Cliff?
No, Gilbert Sanchez.
Gilbert, I'm sorry. Gilbert was talking about isolation from other races within the cast. I was the cast that went to the Munich Olympics, okay? And we were in that infamous whole experience. We came back to the States and we realized we have never actually done the show for Black people. And they sent us to Chicago, inner city. And a couple of us, you know, a handful of us that were in the cast, you know, we're like, yo, man, this thing went over big in Vermont and it went over big in Germany. But how are the brothers and sisters going to react to us? And this was an all-Black high school. And our first number is Don't Keep It to Yourself. And we run out and I do this little musical breakdown thing in it with a, you know, little side to side, the whole cast moving, and then a spin. And the place goes berserk. And I think it had something to do that at the time I looked like Jermaine Jackson. Because at the end of this little, you know, 15-minute show, we do the thing where we jump off the stage into the audience. Well, these ladies in the front row grabbed me, pulled me into the audience. My feet are off the ground and my clothes are coming off. And security had to run down the aisle, grab me, and stick me in a classroom till the end of change of period. And I got so much grief from the cast, but I was like, the big thing was the message got across.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever way we chose to get the message across with the Jermaine Jackson lookalike, they wanted to talk to us afterwards, and they were interested in the song we were singing. So I kind of knew then, all right, so this Up With People thing can cross racial lines.
Thank you, Michael. That's awesome. Great, great, great memories. Glad that you were able to get out of there with all your clothes on. Like to turn to Mr. Strickland. Because I'm
actually doing a Jeffrey Toobin here right now. So
well, you know, Mr. Strickland being on Soul Train, I'm assuming that your fan base grew and you had clothes ripped off you from time to time, or attempts anyway. One of the things you said early on was you talked about faking it when you were on Soul Train. When you were on tour, and I'm asking as it relates to Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, The Mask, did you have to fake who you were when you were surrounded by castmates who weren't like you, or were you able to just be Eric Strickland?
I felt like I pretty much could be myself, because I grew up, I never felt, my parents always raised me to believe that I was everything I was supposed to be. I never felt like I was less than anybody. So, and my mother, she worked in a multicultural environment. And so we pretty much, we embraced, we had a chance to mingle with everybody, so it wasn't really a shock for me, but I know there was racism, and, people would say things, and, some of the other cast members would say that so-and-so said this or that. And we would,
fellow castmates,
yeah,
saying,
fellow Black castmates, and they would, and I don't know, I never actually heard these things, but I believed it was true. But and the one guy in particular that I'm thinking about, he was from Little Rock, Arkansas. So maybe I always thought that maybe the way he was raised was probably different than the way I was raised. So he might have been a little bit more sensitive than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy kind of wore a mask, I would say. He was a different guy. He was my friend, but he was kind of a different brother. Because I remember.
Eric, can I add something on to that? I was lucky with my parents too, before Up With People. My dad, as I said, was an educator, but for 3 summers in a row, he was the director of a youth camp that was run by the Unitarian Church in upstate New York. And if you know anything about Unitarians, very laid back, especially in the early 70s. Here you had a Black man who was the director of a camp mostly of white kids. The camp used to be called the hippie camp on the lake, and they always got raided by the police because they thought sex, drugs, and rock and roll was going on. I had some friends just as recently as last week look at some pictures from back then, and they go, it looks like the cast of Hair. And it did. I mean, we looked like we were at Woodstock. And some of us went to Woodstock when it happened. Not me, didn't want to get wet. But no, that whole thing about wearing a mask, my father always told me that. He says, you got to be one way here and another way here. And I remember one time when I was like doing very well here in Omaha, Nebraska. We had turned a number 3 station into a dominant number 1. And I was in a drinking establishment in the community, Brothers. And this Black guy says to me after I'm talking for 15 minutes, he goes, man, you sound nothing like how you sound on TV. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Should I said that the po-po busted a cap in the Negro's ass? And he goes, I mean, is that how you wanted me to say it? And he said, yeah, that was kind of stupid. I said, yeah, I mean, I've got to put on a different face. And it was so funny and Up With People. You only had, like, in the cast when we finally got together, maybe 4 Black guys and 2 Black young ladies. And when we got together, it was the dozens. I mean, we were loose. And if some white kids started walking around, we go, okay, clean it up, clean it up, right. Because they don't get it. And there were a lot of white kids who admitted to me, they go, I had never talked to a Black person before till I met you. And I think that Carolyn Lee, who was our professor, who traveled with us, before we went down south, she had a cast meeting. And it's one of those, and I've got to post it on Facebook because she deserves her kudos. She said to us, basically to the white cast members, you're going down south right now, and you may be with a host family who starts talking about spics and niggers and stuff like that. Excuse me, folks. And what are you going to say? You've now traveled with Michael and Maria. You know that this is not true. Are you going to say something, or are you just going to turn around and walk out the room? And I tell you, since that day, I have given that speech to my students that I've been invited to talk to. I even used it when I was on the campaign trail running for Congress. It's a great story about what are you going to do? And I think that is kind of what is fueling this conversation, because this spring, when that whole thing exploded on Facebook, a guy who traveled with me, a blonde white guy, said, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "I'm going to send it to you," because I had it on my phone. And I looked at it and I got back to him in a text and I said, "I only gave it a cursory look." And of course, the fellow journalist knows what that means. A lot of stuff's coming across your desk. You give it a quick look and you got to figure out quickly what it's all about. And I said to him, "I don't even know who the sender is, male, female, black, white, but I know what the point they were making. When we were all 18 and 19, we were going to conquer the world. This world was damaged and we were going to make it work for us the way it should work." Well, a lot of us left Up With People and hadn't done anything with it. And this is what I said to this guy who contacted me. I said, "You know what? I do a radio show. My co-host and I, summer of 2019, we had a guest on, a white guest, and we were talking about the big story of the day, which was one of our state senators, white, Republican, denounced the president and his party. It made international news because from the Midwest, this Republican called his party racist." And I said to the guy who was on our show, I said, "Man, I'd love to meet him." And he goes, "Well, he's going to be at the Free Speech Society on Saturday. Come and meet him." So my co-host and I show up. There's like 75 all white people, mostly GOP. And we go in there to listen to this guy who had brought this up, pretty much debate the county chairwoman about whether there's racism in the party. And somebody stood up in the audience and said, "Well, I don't know why these black people are so upset, because unemployment's at a low right now." And again, this was last year. And unemployment's at a low right now. And I had to push my co-host back in her chair because she was about to pop out. And I said, "Let me handle this." And I said to the audience, I said, "Show of hands, who here has been in North Omaha in, say, the last 5 years?" Like 3 hands went up. I said, "You don't know what's going on in North Omaha. First of all, unemployment is double digit there, okay? There's land that's just sitting there from the days of the railroad, and we don't know what's in it. There are a lot of problems in North Omaha, and that's what we're concerned of." And then my co-host got...
Yeah, not meaning to interrupt. As much as I would love to find out more about what's happening in Omaha, I'd like to get a little bit more from Mr. Strickland about his experiences with Up With People, because while it sounds like, Mr. Strickland, your experience was very different. You didn't have to, you said you didn't have to wear the mask. Is that what you were saying? You could be yourself?
Yeah, I felt like I could be myself, because I didn't, I grew up around white people, so that it wasn't like I felt like I had to fake who I was.
How many people of color were in your group?
There was 7 in our group. There was 5 guys and 2 girls. And like I said, we were all from different places. So there was one of the, what was he? He was on staff, and he used to act like, I remember that movie Airplane was out, and everybody was like, "Oh, you guys are talking jive." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What is that?" Because I hadn't seen the movie. And so he would always, he would, I guess you would say, talk jive to the white people. And we told him, man, just be yourself. Let them see that you are not from the hood, because he was not from the hood. So just be yourself. Don't fake for them. Just be yourself.
And that was beneficial. So is it safe to assume that your cast did not have any of the issues that we've heard discussed earlier today? Any of the self-segregation, any of the racism, either from community members or within the cast?
I can't say there was none, but the way you handle it is just be yourself, and there was nobody that was, we weren't militant or anything like that, but just like I say, if you just be yourself, people will like you or not, or you just learn from each other. That was kind of my opinion.
Hey, Will, is there any chance I can just finish the thought I was on there earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Strickland had his moment.
Yeah, no, the point I was trying to make is that my co-host and I went into a white situation, and what happened was we made them look at what they were saying, and they all turned around to us afterwards and asked us to come back to host a seminar. We came back, did that, and the next time they met in the Black community at the Malcolm X Center, which is our studio was downstairs. When you say Malcolm X to white people, they go into a panic and a cold sweat, okay? Because they don't know how Malcolm's life actually ended and why it ended. He was changing. So they came, 60 of them, and it was fantastic. We had dialogue. They were able to ask questions. As we said, they became woke to what was going on. And then, of course, have this year that we've had where people taken to the streets. I'm so happy to see that at least 70% of the people in the streets aren't Black.
Right.
A lot of them are young kids.
A lot of people are much more woke now. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Scott.
I guess the final point is, don't tell me what you did when you were 18 and 19. In the words of Janet Jackson, what have you done lately, okay, to improve race relations? That's what I thought the person who posted that on Facebook was trying to say. What have we done lately? We all got our families and our money and we're set, but what are we doing to the community? That's it for me.
No. Well, now I wanted to jump into the 90s and talk to our farmer turned fashionista, Mr. Everett. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experiences with your troupe?
Yes. Just listening to all the stories, it definitely brought up some things that I probably pushed to the back of my mind. But just following with Michael in a sense of, meeting, I came from a very small town, North Florida. If you've all been to North Florida, we have a beach there that's considered the redneck Riviera. So just to kind of paint that picture of like where I came from, and just coming from a small community where, of my family and, single child, my mom sent me to Out with People, not seeing the group, just seeing my experience, my excitement to actually travel and, to do music and see the world. She allowed me to go, but, of course, young Black kid coming from the South, you're giving some, don't do this, be careful, when you're staying with white people or, when you are in a certain part of town that's predominantly white, just always be aware. So, she kind of loaded up my backpack of burdens of, how do you act around white people? And so when I got to Arizona, I was just excited to see a different terrain. And so once I got into Out with People, I'll never forget the first person that I actually met and actually had a conversation with. I don't think she's on today, but her name is Dara Williams. And I just remember Dara saying to me, like, I don't know, and she's also a Black female. She said to me, like, I don't know about this group because I see a lot of white people. I don't see a lot of us. And then I just remember turning and looking at the audience going, yeah, you know, she's right. But at this time, I'm just excited. So, and I'll never forget, we had a meeting of people of color. And when I think back about it now, I have a different perspective about it. But we had a meeting for people of color. And what we did was we got together all the people from all these casts, people of color, so that we can be prepped on what we're going to experience as people of color when we go into different cities, and how do we react to, you know, different situations that we are put into. And as a staff member, I mean, as a student, I'm just taking this all in, and now I'm getting a little bit like, okay, I have to be on my P's and Q's, I have to do this. So it made me more aware. In hindsight, the lesson should have been given the other way around, because there were so few of us. And it was more of like, how, you know, think of how, you know, the minority is going to feel being put in different situations where, you know, you are maybe the first Black person this person has had into their home. Or, you know, there's 11 or 12 of us and they would never room 2 people of color in the same family.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Are you saying that basically the same speech you got from your mama,
yeah,
you got from someone Up With People about how to behave in the presence of white folks? Did I mishear you?
No, yeah, let me clear that up. It wasn't so much of how to behave, it was more of what to expect. You might run into these type of situations. And to give you a prime example, we went to Pekin, Illinois. We were sent to this city. Yeah. The city had a very strong KKK presence. We were not, people of color, were not informed until we got into the city. And it wasn't by the PR team. For me, it was my host family. And we were sitting at dinner, and I said, hey, you know, we met some students from the high school and we're gonna go to this football game. And we're gonna have a great time. So my host mom told me and my roommate, she's like, you know, I don't want you guys to be worried or scared, but you know, this town has 1% Black. And and her 1% was a teacher that worked in the school. So she's like, I just want you to be careful. In my mind, coming from the South, I already know what this, I know what this means. I don't want to disappear in this city. So I was very cautious, but I was more upset that I wasn't warned, like this is what we're going into. And when we're in that city, you know, we had a parade, and some of my other fellow cast members, people of color, they had, you know, they were walking in a parade, and it was literally like, I mean, excuse, nigger go home, blah, 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 you know, speak, like, just, this is a parade, you know, and we're in the city for 3 days. So I'm scared. I'm in a point where I'm like, I just met these high school kids, they're white, they want to take me to a football game. Where I'm from, there's a high chance of disappearance or some type of, you know, something happening. So that was a really tough city for us. But to go back, the meeting that we had kind of preferenced us, like, you're going to be put in situations where you might be the only Black person that this person has come in contact with. So look at it as an opportunity to teach versus react. And so I kind of carried both messages of like what my mom told me and what we had in this meeting. And, you know, and so I'm like, okay, I'm in this beautiful multicultural group, and there was a spinoff that went to New Mexico, and I wanted to do Rocky. I could do Rocky. I could do the one-hand push-ups. I knew the whole scene. And when you have a dance captain that tells you you are not wow, you're not allowed to do something because of your color, it's a very, it basically kind of shaped my year of, so sorry about that.
No, thank you for sharing, Tony.
It shaped my year.
Can I ask you this? These painful things that you're sharing with us, what, if anything, back then would have helped you? Is there anything the cast members could have done? Is there anything Up With People could have done? Anything would have given you some type of life vest, a life raft, something to help you make it through?
Well, it was like, it was hard because I felt like I had bought into this dream, but I didn't have a receipt for it. It was like, I bought into this dream and I get told, you can't do this multicultural group, you can't do this because you're Black. Rocky was not Black. And my argument to that was the stage is lit dark, so who cares? And I couldn't do it, but I was asked to help prep someone else for this role. So for me, and I said to him directly, I said, well, okay, cool. I'll help my friend prep for this role because I like my friend, he's white, and it had nothing to do with him. But I said to the dance captain, don't look for me to do jive. Don't look for me to do any Latin dances. Don't look for me to do anything that you felt because I was Black, I was good for that role. I'm done. I'll stand on stage or I'll stand off back. And
can you elaborate on that, Tony? Because when you said that about not being able to do Rocky because you have melanin, were you typecast to do Black stuff?
Yes.
Were you the gospel singer? Were you the jazz?
I wasn't a gospel singer, but there were few Black males in the cast. So we were all kind of placed in different situations that were typecasting situations. And
how did that feel?
I didn't notice it until after I was told I couldn't do Rocky. Then everything became a little bit clearer to me. You know, and then, you know, you get this, so you're like, okay, well, you start feeling like, well, this person doesn't care about me and it must be okay because he's a staff member. So everyone must be in accord, in agreement to whatever he's, you know, thinking. And to kind of go into like, it was three of us. We were in a store in Germany on a spinoff in a liquor store, 3 people of color. And we were looking at a tall bottle of Kirsch, of liquor. And we were like, oh, we've never seen this in the United States. Like, this is really weird. And we were just talking, being ourselves, talking about the bottle. And the store owner in German just told us to get out of the store, get out. And we kind of looked at her like, what? And she's like, get out, get out, get out. I'm going to call the police. And it was because of our color. It was literally, we wasn't doing anything wrong. We were just laughing and joking amongst each other. And she felt threatened, or if we were going to do something to the store, but she threw us out. And we kind of took it like, I'm happy that we were smart enough to say, well, we argued with her a little bit, but we were like, well, we don't want to spend our money here anyway. So that was a valuable lesson at that time, that we didn't understand what we were doing, but we knew we didn't want to spend our money there because she was kicking us out because of our skin color. So,
hey, Tony, I'm going to let you regroup, but before I do want to ask, what do you want people to know most about how these situations impacted you then? And I can tell even to this day, because some people will listen and say, well, you know, that was back in the 90s. Why is he still bringing this up? But these scars, they stay with us.
Yeah. I would say I'm older, so I've learned to navigate certain spaces. And I've taken that experience to help me build and to think, but also use those experiences as teaching moments, not only for myself, but the people that I come in contact with. And also my daughter, who's a biracial child, who I could say, you know, would pass as other. So she won't have the burdens that I have, in the sense of, you know, don't be too loud, you know, use the correct language, don't just be you, don't code switch. Like, so for me, I take everything, yeah, and it's painful because, like I said, I bought into this group, into this idea, and I still feel like it's an amazing group. And there were just some things that were not being talked about or was not being addressed, maybe because of lack of education, lack of experience dealing with other people from other cultures. And so what I take from it is everything is a learning experience for me. And just to kind of say where I have the learning experience, what kind of helped me change my year was when you go into a host family, you get your host family list. And on that list, it might be they have a cat, they have a dog, they're looking for a girl, they're looking for a guy. I had a list and it said, request 1 Black male. And I looked at the list and I automatically got defensive because I'm like, this is not serious. You can't just order me. And so I was already aggressive and then when I spoke to the host family, they said that the reason that they requested 1 Black male was because there are no Black people in this town and they want their kids to actually have an experience with a person of color.
At least it wasn't the movie Get Out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I'm glad you said that because I was thinking 1 Black male.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, and to your point, that's exactly where, you know, I took it that way. Till this day, they're still good friends of mine, and I love them to death. So I did get a great experience from it. So.
Well, thank you.
Will,
Thank you
I
for
want to
sharing
let
that.
I want to let our audience know that normally we would have taken a break by now, but we
I'm
still have
sorry.
to hear from the youngest member of the panel. And it's entirely possible that we might move a little bit past our normal ending point because we have a lot to say and we want to give people the room to say it. So after we all get to meet Jeffrey, then we'll take a 5-minute break so everybody can take a bio break or grab another coffee.
Okay. Thank you, TJ. Yeah, I was just about to order 1 more Black male. Go to blackmail.com. This one's young, doesn't have a lot of mileage on it. So, but Jeffrey Foreman, listening to all those stories from 1965 and 72 and 81 and 91, I'm assuming as a millennial, you didn't have to deal with any of that, right? Everything was rosy and no racism.
I wish I could say that.
No. What were your experiences like, Jeffrey?
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge everyone on this panel, especially Tony. I didn't have to deal with nothing quite as impactful as your story where you couldn't do something because of the color of your skin. It was actually quite the opposite for me. I was cast in everything in the show. It was, I mean, as much as I could be on stage, they were like, you're singing this song, you're dancing this next song, you're on microphone groups for this next song. You have 20 seconds to change, do a quick change and get back on stage, so it was different in that aspect. But as far as the cast as a whole, I can only think of, including myself, 7 Black people that we had, and 3 of them were from Ethiopia, and they were not Black, they were African. So we had that, it was a weird thing, it was a little
Jeffrey, can I ask you a question? And
yes, sir.
All the rest you can chime in also. As an outsider, I just want to know, why are there so few people of color in Up With People?
That's a great question. That's a question that I asked during the duration of the time that I was Up With People, during my student semester and working on staff and everything. I didn't understand, because in my in my, opinion, we want to try to target those people, and people from different neighborhoods and from different ethnic backgrounds who may need to see something outside of their norm to get a different perspective on life, to show them that, yes, you're not just in that little bubble. Life is bigger than, what it is that you're accustomed to. So I always asked that question. I didn't see a lot of people.
I think Professor Scott, you have an answer?
Professor Scott. No, I don't even remember what I was going to say.
No, but the more I'm listening to you all, and it's, I was in class of 72, there were 7 of us. I was in 91, there were 10 of us. And you got 100 people or more. I'm just wondering, is it Black people don't sing and dance, or Black people didn't sing and dance back then, or is it a money thing? What is it?
Okay, here's the point I was going to make a little bit. Mid 80s, we had a reunion for Up With People someplace like in San Diego or something like that. And as you guys all know, you've been to reunions, someone from your cast will come in and tell you all the great things Up With People is doing. And they were like, and we're going to get all these Africans and so joining the cast. And I said, how come we don't have any American Black kids? And they were like, oh, well, we just don't know how to get them. And I said, pump your brakes. First of all, you all know who Tim Clark is, okay? We got Tim Clark from Omaha. Jerry Johnson, we got him. I said to him, you got 3 kids in the cast right now from the Omaha area that are people of color. You obviously are not talking to the right people or asking the right questions. And we were told by Dale Penny, Michael, you know what? You brought up some good things. We're going to reach out to you. This is 2020. I still haven't heard from Dale Penny on this subject. Okay? They give a lot of lip service about trying to bring more people of color into the group, but it's not happening. And again, I don't know what they're doing when they go to these cities, who they're talking to.
Jeffrey, what was your troop like? How many were in your group? You were one of?
I think total with staff, there was 106 of us, and we represented 26 different countries from around the world. And from those countries, myself and, so my memory is terrible right now, but I can only think of one other American Black. But there was like a Black girl from Bermuda, a Black guy from the Curacao, the Netherlands, Antilles, and then there were 3 Ethiopians. And if I'm missing anyone, I apologize. I just can't think off the top of my head. But it was very interesting to see, joining this group, because I remember day one, getting off of the plane, getting picked up, going into the building, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was a little bit, nervous, and I'm not usually one of those people that get nervous around strangers. And I was like, what is this that I got myself into? What am I doing? And looking around the building, and I didn't see Black people at all. I was just like scanning the building like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Well, the area that I grew up in Eureka, California, we don't have a lot of Black people in general, but the majority of them that are here are my family. I have a lot of, relatives throughout the town and everything. And so it's interesting because we all hang out, and then I have all of my friends are all the plethora of the rainbow, different colors, ethnicities, or whatever. So I was fine, but it was one of those things where I was like, I was almost expecting to see more of people that looked like me, and I didn't. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, I'll just go along with it.
By going along with it, does that go back to what we were talking about earlier about wearing a mask? You're going along with it even though it's not something you're exactly happy about?
Yeah, I can agree with that. So at the time that I traveled, I was dealing with the death of my mother. So I was trying to put on a mask to not be sad or not just zone out. And sometimes I'd be super engaging. And I've had these conversations with people over the years who I've traveled with. One of them being one of my closest friends, Liz Davis. I love her. She was actually the first person who I met when I walked in the building day one. and we sat down and had an instant connection. And her and I have had this discussion, you know, and I was just like, I gotta not be so like, how do I put it? I need to be more engaging and try not to be down and sad about things or whatever, because I don't want to be looked at as the angry Black man. But a lot of people didn't even know what I was dealing with on the inside. And so there were times where we'd be in some kind of staging or rehearsals, and I'd be like zoned out and not here, focused in. And I think it was being perceived as I had an attitude or whatever, but I was, you know, trying to deal with the trauma of losing my mother. And a lot of people didn't even realize that for the longest time, because I didn't say anything, because that's just something that I didn't want to talk about, you know? And so I was putting on a mask to put out this image of, yeah, I'm gonna try to be happy, I'm gonna try to be engaging and all this, but you can only do that for so long. It's not like you can keep on putting on this image if that's not really you, you know, and if that's not how you feel. And so it was misinterpreted as, I believe I should say, that it was misinterpreted of me being like a diva or whatever. And yeah, I have a strong personality. I know that. If I think something's should be one way and it's not, I'm gonna voice my opinion. If you don't like it, then okay. If you do, yay, let's go along with it. Let's collaborate, you know, type of thing. But it was very interesting listening to everyone else saying, you know, the different masks that they had to wear while, you know, traveling and stuff. So yeah, I can definitely see how within myself I had to do that as well.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, and thank all of you for sharing those powerful messages. TJ, you mentioned something about a short break.
Yes.
Some questions.
We have more questions than we've ever had before. We have a lot of questions for each of you. And when we come back, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to ask all the panelists, you can go ahead and turn off your cameras and microphones, and everybody at home, get up and walk around for 5 minutes, get another coffee, or if you're somewhere else, go ahead and pour another bourbon. And we will be back in about 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. As you're coming back, I just wanted to invite a guest on screen because we've had a number of people who have asked a very specific question about today's panel. And as you may have noticed, everyone on the panel today is male. And there was a decision that was made that for this first panel, it would be men of color. And I wanted to bring on our producer and the chairman of the committee of volunteers who have been doing this. So Donalda McCarthy traveled in cast B 1991, specifically Amy Stunkel from cast C 98, who wanted us to know that she is also African-American, wanted to know, why are we gender specific today? How come we only have men on the panel?
Is that for me? Sorry, I was in my ear.
Yes, Donalda, that question is for you.
Oh, all right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and for taking part in the initiative by the Up With People Board of Governors, and to get programs created for the IAA to last for a long time. And this is just one episode out of very many years that we hope to be doing this program. And we started with just males because keeping a small conversation or keeping the number of people in a conversation is essential to allowing the space for people to be able to be heard and others to be able to listen. And something that happens when women of color are in the same space as their men of color is we tend to get a little protective. And we want to mama bear and bear cub and jump out in front of our men of color. And there are very many reasons for this. I could take it back to slavery in that Black women who were the concubines, we were able to talk mass down from beating the men that we claimed to be our husbands, if we exchange it for favors and the like. And that has threaded itself into the culture, and you see our Latina sisters doing it, and it's just what we do. And we ended up on the road. Tony, back me up on this. My cast members, my female cast members of color, we tend to talk for our men instead of letting them speak up for themselves, because we are aware of just how scary the perception of our men is. And so it was important that we de-scarify our men. Yes, that is a new word.
Thank you very much, Donalda. And now we will, as you said, we will turn it back over. You no longer need to jump in front. We have, we're excited to have a fantastic group of gentlemen who traveled over 6 decades of Up With People. I wanted to welcome back, for those of you, Gilbert Sanchez traveled in the original cast in 1965. We have Michael Scott, who traveled in cast 72B. Eric Strickland, who's from Los Angeles, who traveled in cast C81. Tony Everett from Brooklyn, who traveled in cast B91. And Jeffrey Foreman, who traveled in 2009A, who's here from Eureka, California. And our moderator, Will Jones, who is from Denver, Colorado, and is not an alum. He might have an Emmy award behind him, which means he asks good questions. That's why they give Emmys, right? So I will turn things back over to Will.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that there's an effort to de-scarify us. You can't see it on the screen, but I'm 6'3", 260, and have a deep voice. And I've been a terror to many people who don't know me, simply because of how God made me. So I do appreciate this opportunity for all of us men to be vulnerable in this space. And I look forward to us responding to some of these great questions. TJ, a lot of questions have been coming in from all over the world, right?
Yes, we have questions that are coming in. I would remind everybody, if you're going to send us a question, let us know if it's for someone specific on the panel, but also please include your name and where you're from and what year you traveled. We had a number of people who, including Sigrid Malik, who is 70 years old, from Germany, traveled in Sing Out Deutschland. That was also her question. There were many who asked about why we only had men here on the panel. And I did have one for you. Debbie Lagomarciano, who traveled in cast 68B, had a question for you. For those of you who traveled in the early years of Up With People, don't you feel that if you had been vocal and insistent about racial inequalities or seeing the need for inclusion, that you would have been sent home? I think cast directors at that time were under guidelines that didn't allow for anyone perceived as a troublemaker.
Well, Mr. Sanchez, would you like to comment on that as someone who's been getting involved in good trouble over the years?
Yes, I would like to respond to that. Yes, I believe that there was a number of youth that were sent home because of their stance and because of whom where their stance was. And I always feared myself and Mr. Story to be a couple of the individuals that would have been sent home had they stuck to their criteria of non-violent or non-hostile individuals. But because we took the lead in doing a lot of the other things that were there, and because we were sent out with other individuals to go raise funds and to get commodities for Mackinac Island to survive and to feed the kids, the number of kids that were there. I think that, you saw people come in, sometimes you saw them for a few days and they're gone. And my assumption at that point in time was they felt like they didn't fit in, so they went back home. You know, it wasn't this thing of how you responded to things and whatnot. I think if I hadn't had the parents I had and my father being who he was, a tribal leader at the point in time when I went to Mackinac Island and up with people, that if I had been sent home, that they would have lost his confidence in up with people and MRA. So, you know, they stuck it out with me, and this is what they developed. This is what I developed into. So, you know, it was there. It was evident in the early days. And going back to what you've been asking, how many individuals of color were there in the original cast? There was quite a bit. There was quite a few of us. Then after a while, after 66, I noticed that the decline in representation by people of color in up with people started to decline, and so forth on into the 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s, and to the present. How many, when up with people became a nonprofit and we're asking people to buy into up with people with this scholarship that they had to buy for themselves in the amount of $17,000, how many of us in the lower echelon of this country are going to be able to provide this kind of opportunity to our youth when we're barely surviving on the finances that we have coming in to survive our own situation at this point in time? I'm going to say something that may be very radical, may be opposed by a lot of people, but I'm going to say it because it's in my heart, it's in my mind, and it's within my soul. And my spirits are not sitting still right now. They're moving around me as I speak. One of the things that I would like to see in the future with people is that they go back to including the minorities that are not financially capable of sending their kids, but developing a real scholarship for them so that they could be included. I see this system that is there right now as a means by which they're going to oppress the young people of color from being involved with up with people. In my days, they went into some places. In 1964, 65, when Watts erupted, we were there the day after. And the enthusiasm of the Black youth that were there, the adults, the radicals that were there, the Black Panthers and everybody else really embrace what we were talking about, changing the world to be a better place, maintaining those 4 absolutes that were given to us by Peter Howard at MRA. Those have gone by the wayside. The things that are going on today, and forgive me if I step on anybody's toes, is up with people is a higher echelon, financially stable people who want to send their kids into the world to see Europe, Asia, Central America, wherever up with people goes, without having to foot the bill, that if they sent them out there on their own, it would cost them $150,000 or more. You know, and it's up with people has become a luxury item for the upper echelon in the cast, after development into a nonprofit, to where people who can afford it are sending their kids to up with people and letting them tour the world at a less expense than they would otherwise. That's my view. That's the way I see it. And I think if up with people is going to continue to go on and be a force in this world, you truly need to be inclusive of all the ethnicities and all the people, no matter what their financial resources are, but to provide for them that situation and be more inclusive of all the ethnicities and the races.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. I know members of leadership are listening. TJ, What other questions do we have?
Well, I have a comment for Gilbert specifically that came from Steve Caldwell. Steve Caldwell sent in something and just said, for Gilbert, I want to apologize to Gilbert for my blindness in 1965. Quote, I was blind, but now I see. Steve Caldwell.
I appreciate that, Steve. You're there. I appreciate it. I've always appreciated your brothers and yourself, with music that you develop and whatnot, and being inclusive in the performances of those musical numbers that were there.
Thank you, Gilbert. And I have a question from Christine Skaggs, who traveled and cast 89A. And she wants to know about code switching. And I know that this is something that that is not specific just to the Black community, that it is in other communities, in the LGBTQ community and other communities as well. But for those who don't know, would anybody like to talk about code switching?
Don't be scared.
Yeah, I mean, I can, yeah, it's more of a way of, it's especially for me, like, I come from the fashion background. So there are certain things, you know, like for me, I feel like sometimes I have to lower my voice or soften my voice or soften myself to be, as we were just saying, not being scary. Sometimes, like, you might speak a different way around your friends, and then when you're in another setting, you have to change your vernacular just because you don't want to be seen as ghetto or uneducated, when it's just more of just being relaxed and not, you know, not taking so seriously. But I feel like, especially for, you know, people of color, just speaking for myself, there are times where I have to be on 90% of the time. And sometimes that's tiring. That, you know, it's that mask where we were talking about, of saying you can't just be who you are. Because, I mean, sure, TJ and Donna, you probably heard me, when I'm at the bodega, I have a different vernacular when I'm talking to you guys. So it's more about just knowing your audience, I guess I can say. That's the way.
Right. And building on what what Mr. Scott said earlier about how when he was at the bar and
Exactly.
someone heard him just speaking, and they're like, wow, you sound very different now than you do on television. It's just have to switch. You know, I explained it to people. A good way is, I don't talk to my best friend the same way I talk to my pastor.
Exactly.
Switch. I can explain the same scenario to my pastor very differently than I would to my best friend, just switching it. But for many men of color, we have to switch. Right, Mr. Scott?
Sounds good to me. Oh, was I expected to respond more?
No. That's perfect.
Hey, you know what, Tony? Actually, back on your story about being told what you could not do. I guess I'm kind of like with Jeffrey. They had me do everything. You know, I became a lead dancer, and next thing I was filling in with a Black lady named Libby. She had been there a couple of years, and she and I then were supposedly from the Bahamas for a dance. I also learned the Guadalajara male part. And Gilbert, you should know that I also know how to do the Native American dance for Vance Horse Chief. He had to teach it to me, as I weren't sure if he was going to make it through the year. So yeah, I guess I was flattered that I was asked. I felt like an all-utility player, you know, with the afro.
Hey, TJ, can I ask a question? Am I breaking protocol?
Not at all. Do whatever you like.
I'm just wondering, and you all can answer, or just one of you can answer, or a couple can answer. As a part of Up With People, were you a Black cast member, or were you a cast member that happened to be Black? And I ask that because as a journalist, I considered myself a Black journalist. I wanted to go in and do the stories in the Black community. I know some Black journalists who were the exact opposite. They were, I am a journalist first and Black second. So I'm just wondering, in your experiences, were you, Jeffrey, you're the Black guy, go do this thing. Eric, you're not Black, you're just a cast member. What was your experience along those lines?
I can answer or something to that. I think once it got to 2009, and the stage show was starting to switch, and they wanted it to be more inclusive to what is going on for the millennials now. So they started employing or working with different music producers like Angel Cortez and Rod Wilson, and so they were producing and writing music that they didn't necessarily have anyone to sing those songs or be that person who would be portrayed as singing those songs. And so when I came along, I actually joined my cast. I think I had 10 days to get everything together, get my life together back home and get on the road. And it was almost like, oh, you're the perfect person. Like, you stepped into this role. Like, this is you. You're like the Black guy who is supposed to be singing these songs. You're the person who we need to portray those songs. And, having those different conversations with, like Rod and with Angel and everything, they were like, it wouldn't have worked if you weren't there. It couldn't have been someone else singing those particular songs because they had to be portrayed by someone like you to get the message across. So I definitely can see how certain things, I can say from my era, how certain things were, I want to say typecast, but it just, I was told that it wouldn't work if it wasn't me.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Can I add something to that? When I was in Up With People in 72, my race only became uncomfortable when we were like overseas, when we were in Spain and northern Spain, where if they saw any Blacks, it was maybe in Barcelona when American troops were there. But me walking through the streets with a shoulder width afro and having little kids chasing you, yelling in Spanish, "Monstra, monstra," monster, or Angela Davis, because that was the only other name they knew, Angela Davis. Now, as a Black cast member, I never really felt whether I was a Black cast member or a cast member that happened to be Black. The only time I ever really thought about race was when we started sending strike groups out. And as the lead dancer, I was told, okay, you're going to be in charge of choreographing the strike group, and make sure you put you on one side and Maria on the other side. Don't bunch up all your Blacks on one side. And that was the only thing I was told about race at that time, at least by management. And again, 72, we drove management crazy. We were this cast, again, we had a redheaded guy with an afro that big too, and long hair, and we were fighting the rules. We didn't want to be separated on the buses anymore. We wanted to be able to date. When we were in Europe, we said, our host families are offering us alcohol. It's rude to turn it down. Okay, fine, you can do it. Just don't get drunk, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we pushed Up With People to make some changes.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Oops, TJ?
Yeah, well, actually, Michael, you're all answering so many of the questions that people have already asked. So I know in particular, Birger Husted had asked specifically how the experience was different for any of you traveling in Europe versus the United States. And I don't know if anybody else had any specific experiences that they wanted to share.
Yeah, I felt like the European experience was, I felt more at home in Europe than I did in the United States because, I didn't like the places we went. I felt more comfortable in Europe. We were in Europe for 6 months. The second half was just great for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. I felt more comfortable in Europe because um, my race was more of where do you come from? And so I could explain, like, and a lot of people in the cast don't even know that I'm actually half Cuban on my dad's side. So it was more of like digging into my history just as a person that helped me. And to kind of go back to being a Black cast member or a cast member that happens to be Black, I went on to do recruiting, to work on Project Pride, to actually traveling in another year. So as I was recruiting, I actually looked at my file and I wasn't accepted on the very first time. And I don't know if I want to name the person that I felt basically gave me my opportunity. And I love her for it because she changed my life, but I wasn't accepted. And she, in the notes, it says, we need more African-American males. And when I read that, I was like, wow, I wasn't accepted, but I was accepted because I was Black to add to the cast. But honestly, I'm not mad at that because it literally gave me that ripple gave me the best experience of my life. And and that's how I took it. And so it just helped me evolve as a person to look at things in a different perspective. But yeah, in Europe, I didn't have the same stress level as I did in the United States because I felt like people just saw me as Tony the Black guy or the Black male. In Europe, it was like, where do you come from? Where's your people from? Where's your heritage from? And it just helped me, you know, research that and dig more into who I really was and what makes me a person and my foundation and fabric.
Hey, Tony and Eric, when you talk about your experiences in Europe and feeling more, my words, not yours, more accepted, more whole, is this a conversation you could have had or did you have with your castmates who were not of color? Just letting them know how different things feel now? Was your cast a comfortable place where you could raise issues like this?
Well, for me personally, I was going through a thing. I had a girlfriend the first half, and we were places where you didn't see a whole lot of Black people, for the first half of the tour. So I guess I was kind of introverted to a degree. But then after the second, we broke up at Christmas. So then
everybody breaks up at Christmas.
I'm good now. So
you didn't want to buy her any presents, Eric? That's what you're saying?
Huh?
You picked a fight on the 24th because you didn't want to buy her any presents?
Well, she dumped me. She dumped me. So I'm like, okay, I'm a free agent now. So I'm going to just enjoy the second half. And it just so happened the second half was Europe. But then again, it's like, I think I did probably start to open up a little more to everyone and to share some things that I was experiencing. Because, I remember one time we went to this place, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and my host family, they took me to this bar. It was just like the bar in 48 Hours where Eddie Murphy is like, we gonna, and I was
this
with
place
a guy
ain't too popular with the brothers.
Right.
So you walk in and all the music stops playing?
Yeah, well, I don't know if that happened, but because that was before I saw 48 Hours. I was like, because when I saw 48 Hours, I was like, I went there. But, there was a white girl that she wanted me to dance with her. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to sit over here and play Pac-Man. I'm staying out of this because I know what could happen. So no.
You were talking about Will as a reporter. When I worked at KMGH in Denver, I had been there like 6 months, and they called me in and said, hey, we want you to be our action reporter, our like 7 Can Help kind of thing. And I said, nope, don't want to do it. And they go, why? And I said, because I watch what it is. it's all, mostly people of color complaining about their rent. And I said, to steal a line from Jim Brown in the movie Tick, 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 I ain't the black reporter, I ain't the white reporter, I'm the reporter. And they looked at me and it was like, you little uppity so-and-so, because I was like 25 years old, but I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be pigeonholed as that. And I was doing an investigative piece at the time and I didn't want to be taken off of it. So I see what you're talking about, but I see about how I've had to fight against that, where people try to pigeonhole you.
Thank you. Thank you. TJ, any other questions from?
We could stay here well into the evening and switch to cocktails if we were going to answer all these questions. Yeah, so we have a question from, where is it? Okay, we have a question from Andrea Kleiman, who traveled in Cast B 2017.
Ooh, a baby.
Yeah, and she is from Mexico City. She is second generation Up With People. Her mother may have traveled with Tony and I. I've heard of several times where typecasting has been questioned from the cast to the staff and the board of directors. Personally, the answer to my cast's question was that typecasting of gender and race was strategically done to show diversity to the audience and be historically accurate. So I guess my question is, us as an international multicultural group, should we strive to show diversity only to the audience, or should we also strive to give equal opportunities to all cast members to do whatever role they strive to do in the show?
I'd say all of the above.
I agree.
It's funny. I was looking at Gilbert here right now, and I was going, should I apologize to Gilbert because when I was in the cast in '72, they were training me to do the Native American dance? And I was going, no, maybe not, because I wasn't going to do it campy. I was going to do it to honor. And if I did it correctly, I would hope that the Native Americans in the cast or in the audience would be proud of what I was trying to do that day.
I definitely understand from a stage standpoint where some aspects of quote unquote typecasting would work, but I think everybody definitely should have, the same opportunities to do whatever it is they can do, as long as they're doing it in, a good light and good favor. They're not trying to make fun of someone else's culture or whatever. But from being on stage myself numerous times and doing different shows, there are certain things that has to go on, and there are certain people that just have to do certain things. So, I guess it's kind of like it can go both ways.
Michael.
Yes.
I appreciate what you said. After the dance, did it rain or snow?
It just got muddy.
No, I think
that's a joke only Mr. Sanchez can get away with in this.
Go ahead.
You
were saying, Gilbert?
In the young man that asked you to and taught you the dance steps, were there any other Native Americans in the cast, or was he the only one?
There were 2 Native American guys and 2 females, and the name of the song was Sacred Mana, and it was like they were doing hand signals, and the other guy, the big Native American guy, was dancing the dance. And the other Native American guy wasn't into it. In fact, he didn't last halfway through the year with us. He was kind of fighting the Up With People experience.
Well, that's understandable, and I can relate to that because, like I said before, there was quite a few of the Native Americans that went up to Mackinac Island, original cast that stepped aside from certain areas, certain parts of the, and went back home because they were disenchanted with the way things were being stereotyped and whatnot. And talking about casting, we were cast as Native Americans, we were cast just to do the Native American dances and not really gotten involved or brought into the whole cast of doing a lot of the other songs that were there. We were either stage hands or backstage people doing things that were there after we'd done our performances or and whatnot. So, you know, I can see what's going on. I see now what was happening, and I appreciate all you gentlemen bringing up those statements. I didn't go to Europe. I went to Asia. So, you know, my experience in Asia was quite much like you guys who went to Europe. They were more accepting, and they accepted me as a Native American in open arms and whatnot and whatnot. I did not feel any way being set aside or whatnot, you know. And my brother, who was my eldest brother, who was in World War II, went to Japan and he fought the Japanese, but yet he was humble enough to forgive and them forgive him for what the atrocities that were done to both countries, men and women from both countries. So, you know, it was a great experience. So, you know, and I appreciate.
I think we should make it clear, though, too, that yes, there were people of color who went home after half a year, but there were also a lot of white kids who went home after a half a year. They figured, no, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So I guess maybe that's something we need to remember, too. It's not always black and white. It's just a matter of fitting in. And you're talking about teenagers, 18-year-olds looking for a direction right now. Oh, my God. I wish I could go back and talk to myself when I was 18.
Me too.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Scott. TJ,
Yes,
do we have time for more questions?
we do. We have a final question, and there are two things. First of all, Amy Stunkel from Cassie 89 wanted to say to Gilbert that she just wanted to acknowledge we're really honored that we have an elder present, as whether that is both as a tribal elder and an Up With People tribal elder. And Christine Skaggs, who traveled in 89A, has our final question, and that's also for Mr. Sanchez. What did your community think about you joining Sing Out back in 1965?
I think it was, for me, it was an honor. It was a privilege and whatnot to be able to go Up With People, travel the United States, and then finally into Japan, Asia, and whatnot. That it was there. A lot of my fellow tribal members my age did not know that I was Up With People until we came back and did some performances in Santa Fe and in our local schools, high schools and whatnot. And at that point in time, a lot of my peers from that age group wanted to go and join Up With People, and they were committing themselves to get involved and whatnot. And it's, you know, as far as I was concerned, the tribal leadership at that time, because of Peter Howard, they were very much supportive of their youth getting involved. You know, like I said, of the Native American youth from New Mexico that went to Up With People, 80% of them came back, became assets to their communities. Majority of them became tribal leaders, governors, tribal councilmen, judges, and whatnot. And they performed to the utmost of what we were taught. The four absolutes that were part of MRA at that time were in line with the tribal cultural teachings of our elders and our ancestors. So we were comfortable in what we were doing. And after I came back, after I told people where I've been and whatnot, a lot of the youth were enthused and enthusiastic and wanted to find out how we can get in there, how we can do these things. And we want to go out there and see the world also. So it was a great experience. And I think that the support from my peers at that time was nonetheless one of the best times of my years. So, you know, it
Okay. Hey, TJ, can you hear me okay? Okay. Tim Clark is sending me texts asking me to direct the conversation about, so what's the future for Up With People? How do you see all these stories helping? Tim and I had a conversation earlier this week, and I had told the story last week about being 10 years old and having a grown white man tell me to get my nigger lips off the water fountain and how it affected me. And we were talking about, these are stories. These are stories that make songs, you know, the story of a child going through something like that. And it's, you know, what message are we going to try to deliver to make Up With People still relevant in hopefully 2021? Hello?
Yeah, as a volunteer who's not on the board of governors,
Yeah.
and as somebody who, yeah, it's not my place to say, but I will say that this conversation is not over. We extended it for a half an hour, but we clearly have a lot more to say, and we clearly need to provide this space for people to speak freely without being interrupted, without having somebody argue with them about what they're saying. I will say that Donalda just texted me to say that Black people are not responsible for solving racism in 90 minutes.
Uh-huh.
no one is. No one is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No one is. And then I have a couple of questions for your board of directors and those people who are managing Up With People. How many people of color, how many Native Americans have served on your board of directors over the years? I have not seen any from the times of my involvement with Up With People reunions and whatnot. It's so ungrateful that we have, and we should get back to the basics of what Peter Howard instilled in the youth on Mackinac Island of the four absolutes of addressing corruption at our local levels, at our regional levels, our state levels, and especially at our federal levels. We should be the people. You and I should be sitting here saying, look at where we're at. We do not have corruption. We went out into the world and we got rid of corruption in many of the countries that we went to, that we talked to, their legislatures, their diets, and all this people, their ambassadors and whatnot. We did wonderful work in the first few years, but I have not seen any of the Up With People board members or people that are in the management standing up and saying we need to get rid of corruption in this world. Then corruption starts with that dollar sign. We need to get rid of that basic concept that money is more important than humanity. Humanity is what we are. We as indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere have always stuck with that. We have always stayed within the teachings of our ancestors and the Creator, our Earth Mother, giving us great rules and regulations, or however you want to call them, guidance to live a life that is beneficial not only to self but to everybody, and to be conscious of what you're doing to others in what you say, what you do, how you do, and where you go and how you go about it. So I think from my perspective is we, the people of With People, and thank you for considering me an elder of Up With People. I am an elder within my community, and I try to guide my young people to get to where we need to get to in a way that is sustaining for all humanity, not just for us, not just for my tribe, but all the tribes of the world. Now, again, I thank you all for being here, and please consider and look at what we have done over the years. Some of it has been great. A lot of it hasn't been that great, but we need to get back to where we were, addressing the issues of the day, corruption, racism, injustices, of all the things that are going social and whatnot. It's there. I've been an activist since I was 18 years old, and I'll probably die an activist. To standing up for those that do not have voice or do not give voice to themselves. From all the inert materials on earth, the waters, the fish, the animals, the trees, my brothers and sisters of all other persuasions and all other ethnicities and races. I do not stand by to let somebody else hurt them in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Yes, thank you. And I'm so glad that you ended this session the way you did. I don't think I need to say anything more other than, as an outsider who has been a fan of your work for many, many years, I can't think of a better time to hit that emergency button and call for Up With People. Because the messages you all delivered when I was a child, when I was growing up through my years, the fact that I said earlier, The Simpsons uses your joy and optimism as a punchline. It says a lot to me that we need that energy right now. And I'm glad that the Alumni Association, that the organization is putting these conversations together, because these are the things that people need to know. And I think that once everything is out on the table, wounds will heal, the organization will get better, and you all can get back to work of healing America and the world, because right now we need you. And I say that because I watched a 1982 Super Bowl performance last night, and I went to bed singing Let the Sun Shine In. And I love just everything that you all do. And I'm glad that I can be a part of this healing process. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you, Mr. Strickland, Mr. Everett, Mr. Foreman, Mr. Sanchez, and thank you, Mr. Jones. We will see Mr. Jones next week and the week after. Gentlemen, I know that you have games and breakfast and family waiting for you. Thank you very much for being here and speaking freely and speaking your truth. I want everyone else to know, first of all, Mr. Sanchez, there were 13 members of the Board of Governors who were watching in the audience of this, so you were speaking directly to them. Just so you're aware of that. Upcoming.
I appreciate that, and thank you.
Everyone else.
I hope they heard.
Yeah, they did. They did. They heard you speak clearly and freely. Thank you very much. Everyone else, you can feel free to turn off your cameras, and you can still stick around. I want to let everyone know that we have 3 weeks discussing race on the road. Next week, we're talking about, we're turning our attention to Europe, and we have European panelists who are going to be talking about race and immigration in Europe. And then on November 7th, 2 Saturdays from now, we're going to talk about allyship and all of the alumni who are out there doing the work, who are able to talk to us about what do you do when you want to support your fellow man and don't know what to say? How do you, what is allyship, and how do you become a good ally? For our women of color in the audience, don't worry, we have not forgotten about you. There will definitely be a women of color panel coming up. And in December, we're going to talk about identity. We're talking about gender identity. We're talking about growing up interracial. We're talking about intercultural adoption. We will be, there are so many more of these conversations coming up. Please, if you check out the Up With People Facebook group, if you have ideas for the committee, you can let us know. And if you're interested in being a part of it, let us know. We're planning to talk about the Native and Aboriginal experience on the road with Up With People, talking about alumni in law enforcement around the world, how to talk to people that are not your age. What do we do when we get baby boomers in the room with Gen Z? Multiracial marriage and parenting and what that is in 2020. Ableism, what it was like when you're traveling on the road, when you are differently abled, whether you don't have your sight or have, whether if you're differently abled. Who stayed with it? Alumni who are still on the stage and in TV and film. So I Married My Bus Date, cast couples that are still together, talking about mental health, trauma recovery. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I live in southern Manhattan, New York, the lands of the Munsee Lenape tribe. The Munsee are a sub-tribe of the Lenape, originally one of the three great divisions of that nation. And they were prominent in the early history of New York and New Jersey, one of the first nations that met with European settlers. And we need to respect and honor the history and the people of the places where we live. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I want to say thank you very much to the members of the Board of Governors that are here. T. McCurry, Danilo, Megan, Birger, Debbie, Craig, Heather, Megan, Stacy, Matthew, Donalda, our past presidents, Christine and Vicky. Thank you so much to the Board of Governors for being here and supporting this ragtag group of alumni who are spending all of their days and nights putting this thing together and bringing these fantastic alumni together. I would like to invite those committee members to turn their cameras on so you could say hello. Donalda McCarthy from B91 in Florida, Martha Renette with 2 N's from 91C in Colorado, Barbara Lounsbury in 81E from Phoenix, Arizona, Charmaine Baker from 65A from Ponca City, Oklahoma, who is a member of the Ponca people. Donnie, you're going to bring her on, I think. Dale Shaver from 87A. And once again, we will be back with Will. He will be joining us for the next 2 weeks. And thank you so much. We're just trying to get Charmaine in here so that she can say hello. She is our rock. She is from 1965, and she is the one that keeps us all on track. For everyone who has been out there watching, please join us next week and the week after. I hope that you will spend your Saturday mornings with us, or Saturday afternoons, or Saturday evenings, depending on where you live. Our goal is to
Charmaine, turn your camera on.
Our goal is to give alumni the chance to speak freely and speak their truth and share their stories. There's Charmaine. Hello, Charmaine. Thank you to all of you who have joined us. We are going back to our lives now, but we will be meeting all week long because we have a fantastic panel of European alumni who are going to be talking about things next week. And I hope that you will continue to join us. Thank you very much, everyone. And we're going to play off with some music.
On the corner with nothing to eat, a man left with only the shoes.